Resident Evil 8 is ultimately an underwhelming follow-up to its predecessor, devolving from a truly horrifying game into an off-the-wall FPS game with no dire situations or consequences. With a convoluted story that goes unexplained for 80% of the game, lackluster boss fights, and content that just seems like it was shortened and crammed into one game, Resident Evil 8 just ends up falling flat. That's not to say that you won't have fun with the game in certain sections. Some parts of this game are done extremely well, and other parts just leave you disappointed, wanting more and seeing what could have been. My wife and I will take you through this game section by section, explaining our thoughts and giving our review. This game is almost impossible to review without some spoilers for bosses, areas, and plot points started at the beginning of the game, so be prepared. Major spoilers ahead.
Chris? What the hell?
Sorry, Ethan.
No! What? Why?
Resident Evil 8 opens with exactly what the trailer shows. Chris Redfield murdering your wife, Mia, and taking your child, knocking you out and seemingly abducting you, but something is off when you wake up next to a charred corpse in a crashed military van. The opening of the game is done extremely well, with Ethan dredging through snowy mountaintops in the dark, bushes and trees rustling around him, and loud, deep growls in the distance. I was actually immersed and terrified during this sequence. The first Lycan attack was horrifying, panicking, not knowing what to do. It really felt like they knew the experience that they delivered in RE7 and wanted to expand and add to that, but that all goes out the window when literally 5 minutes in, you're handed a shotgun and put in a wave survival situation, running around this village and blowing Lycans away like a chicken with your head cut off. I do have to say, the visuals of this game are best in series. They're absolutely breathtaking. The snowy village truly shows what the PS5 can do, as that's the system I chose to play on. The setting was perfect, and the atmosphere of the game is incredible, and that only continues to shine through as the game progresses. Eventually, this wave survival sequence ends when you're attacked by a giant monster who's also seen in the trailer, which ironically enough you only see 2 times throughout this game. He realizes he left the oven on, and Hulk jumps off in the distance, leaving you to now explore this broken and monster-infested village. The problem is, there's nothing hardly to do. There's a little side mission, or so you think, but in reality it's just to progress the main story, which is an ugly trend in this game, not only with the missions. After single-handedly causing the death of multiple people, you decide, thanks to one of those people telling you your daughter might be there, to invade a dark, dank, scary-looking castle. This goes about as well as you would expect, and Magneto comes out of nowhere. Get it, Magneto, because he controls metal? Anyway, you're captured and taken to meet Mother Miranda, Heisenberg or Magneto, Lady Tall Vampire Girl, Fishboy, and Annabelle, who are seen arguing over who gets to toy with you and prepare you for the ceremony. A plot point that never actually gets followed up. It's decided that Heisenberg would get control over you.
Goddamn right.
And immediately you see how dysfunctional this little family is. After this sequence, you're sent into a full-on Raiders of the Lost Ark escape sequence full of traps with a tense, being chased feeling behind it. This was nice. I enjoyed meeting the characters, getting some knowledge into what the hell was going on. Ultimately, moments like this are far and few in between in Resident Evil 8. After you end up making your escape, still determined to get into that dank-ass castle, you make your way back and run into one of the most interesting characters in the game, the Duke, who is your merchant. He pops up all around the map in every area, acting as a safe room, usually having a typewriter to save, and gives the player the ability to buy and sell items. He actually ends up playing a major part in the story, not in a bad way and not necessarily in a good way either. And also, if you're noticing the lack of me talking about puzzles in a Resident Evil game, it's because there have been no puzzles thus far. I searched far and wide, and the most difficult puzzles were always, how the fuck do I get this door open? Wells that obviously just need a missing part to operate. No puzzles of the sort so far, and yes, that trend also continues. But that's just the prologue, right? The castle is where the real game begins, right? The first main area. Of course it'll pick up, right? Well, about that. You make your way into the castle, and you're almost immediately captured by Lady Dimitrescu, however you say her name, and her 3 fly doggers, who still give very little insight into what the hell is going on. But overall, the designs are amazing. The design of the 3 girls and Lady D were spectacular. Although the daughters look like the classic, "It's not a phase, Mom" kids, the design of the castle, the layers, the layout, It was all great. The ambience of the setting, it was almost feeling like it was ripped right out of Bloodborne. It was great. Making your way through the castle, doing different things to unlock different areas, trying to avoid the daughters and Lady D herself felt really good. Even though most of the tension is knocked back due to having 3 weapons, one being a shotgun, and plenty of ammo, it still felt great, because you can't harm either of the 4 with those guns at this point. Still, the area had a distinct lack in puzzles and side puzzles. There are a few main puzzles that progress the story, but when doing them, every time I thought it was a side puzzle that would lead to something really cool, or in-depth backstory, an item or something, it was just a main puzzle to progress the story. Like, we're so used to these side puzzles having interesting things, and there are just none so far. While the design of the 3 girls, along with Lady D, are great, the boss fights for each of these characters are extremely poorly done, Lady D being the worst of the 4. To fight the girls, you literally just open a window or a roof hatch, and the bugs they're made up of start to freeze, therefore letting you deal weapon damage. And having a shotgun, pistol, knife, and even a sniper rifle for the last daughter, these fights end up being done as fast as they start. Lady D even ends up taking on a Mr. X style of sorts, with it being introduced in an insanely cool way, having her Freddy Krueger chop your hand off while you're trying to pull a lever. She becomes a looming presence after that, in the way that Mr. X did, but it's done entirely wrong here. There were points where I was 1 floor above her and 2 doors down a hallway, blowing one of her daughters to pieces, and she was nowhere in sight. You could easily run her around corners and hallways that would loop back around just to get away. After the introduction of it, I was never scared. I knew that she wouldn't chase me into most places, so I just freely wandered about. I'd run and put the masks on the little exit door puzzle and haul ass back to where I knew she wouldn't follow. In RE2 Remake, you were free game for Mr. X.
X gon' give it to ya. Fuck, wait for you to get it on your own. X gon' deliver to ya.
As long as it wasn't in a safe room. Lady D does not operate like that, and it's extremely disappointing. Lady D also ends up with possibly the worst boss battle in the game as well. Being stabbed with an ancient knife coated in poison the monster, she reveals her true form, which actually looks really cool. And then she just proceeds to fly around, letting you shoot her, occasionally landing, walking slow, and giving you time to hide in little tower hidey holes, only breaking one to send you running. But she dies extremely quickly, and just like that, the section is over. The section that got the most screen time in the trailers is done. This is a trend that continues throughout the game, and areas are extremely well designed, populated by extremely interesting characters, only to be cut short to a total of maybe an hour and a half apiece. Some are longer, some are shorter. The castle is one of the longer ones. Most, if not all, the areas in this game feel like they could have been entire games of their own. And it's disappointing to have that thought and know what could have been. After the fight, you collect a strange vial with a crest on top and make your way back to the village, once again running into the Duke and having him explain that the vial with the strange parts in it were actually pieces of your daughter, who had been split into 4 pieces and given to each lord. That if you wanted her whole, you had to retrieve each piece from different lords on the map. Holy shit, explaining that out loud makes it sound worse. Either way, the Duke marks each of the lords on your map and you set off, choosing which one to take down first. I chose the doll, and then the Fishman Moreau.
The next area my husband completed was House Beneviento. On the way to the home, you travel through the snowy forest, where you come to find Donna's daughter's grave, Claudia Beneviento, which is a puzzle you must complete later on, once you've returned to the village for the 3rd time, which is the only puzzle you encounter on the way to and from the house. As you walk through the snowy and creepy looking forest, you make it to the dank home of Donna, the Dollmaker, and her doll Angie. As you are entering the home, there seems to be nothing off. You can look around for a moment, collect what you find, and continue through, until you enter a room where you see Angie the doll sitting in a chair with the leg flask. After you grab the flask, the lights cut off and the doll talks, and it says she would be a better daughter and to stay with her forever. Then the lights cut back on. This is where it gets interesting, and you have no weapons and every door is locked. It truly makes this a creepy and terrifying setting. Along with the dank doll becoming a pro pickpocket and yoinking everything from you, a doll was added on the table. Upon looking, it is a doll of your wife Mia. As you start to look around, examining the doll to be able to get out of the room, the radio goes off and there are recordings of your wife. You continue on, eventually being able to open doors and making your way through the puzzles, which I must say the puzzles in this area were great and very intriguing, and I would consider them to be the best in the game. After opening some doors, you come to find the film puzzle. This puzzle was truly intriguing. The film pieces were of your daughter, your wife's music box, etc. Once you finish the puzzle, it shows you a short clip of going downstairs into a dark room, eventually coming to a very creepy well, which continuing on with searching the house come to be exactly what you were going to do. It was a recording of your exact steps. Creepy Metal Gear Solid 1 shit. You get to this well and go into it, find a key, and when you climb out you hear a baby crying. This is where the atmosphere in this section was truly amazing. The lights are shut off and you are trying to figure out how to cut them back on. By doing so, you come into contact with a giant horrid looking thing that honestly reminded me of my exes.
Even to a guy like me, that's cold.
But anyways, it starts to chase you down a dark hallway. You get that sense of panic and of what am I going to do? Or where am I going to go? When you get away from it, you can continue to look and you end up making it downstairs where their lights are still cut on and you can look around. When you're looking around, you come to a room. Now, one of my biggest complaints with this section is here. When you enter the room, you can look around and it gives you a little option near the bed and it says hide. I felt like this just ruined the whole initial scare aspect when you knew it was going to happen because of the hide option. It also let you know where you were going to go when it happened. I feel like it took some of the initial feeling of panic away from it. Granted, you still had that horrid thing chasing you as you try to finish your puzzle and it was right on your ass as you fix the elevator. If you don't fix it fast enough, you're gonna die. Just like my husband did. As long as you didn't die and didn't have to restart, you should be on the elevator going up after your heart attack. When you make it to the next floor, you're led back into the main room with the once empty hall being filled with dolls. Once you make it to the main room, you encounter store brand Annabelle and Donna Beneviento, who is revealed to be invisible and controlling the doll, which is where this boss battle is going to begin. Andrew the doll tells you that you have to play hide and seek with her, and if you're too slow, her friends are going to kill you. 0 out of 10 does not sound like a good time. When my husband initially started this boss battle, it was creepy. He didn't know exactly what he was going to do other than looking for this dumbass wannabe Annabelle. If you didn't look fast enough, the other dolls started to shake and would eventually come up and stab you, giving you 3 times until you were dead. The thing is, once you knew what you was going to do, and looking in obvious places, this boss battle was super easy. It was a great game of seek and stab. I understand this is just a doll, and they're trying to create a fun and interesting way to kill her because in reality, it should be very easy to kill a doll. It's just, it was very easy once you knew what you were going to do. You find her 3 times, stab her each time, she's dead. Once she was dead, you got all of your stuff back, including the flask, and then headed back to the village. This was by far the dankest part of this game.
I think this is a good spot to go over some of the other things in the game, such as side content. By this point, we found mostly everything we need to search the entire map, and it was at this point where I did go back and search the map for all of the treasure I missed, wells that I needed from previous areas, etc, etc. The main thing I want to point out first, though, is Duke. While he's the most interesting character in the game for me, and I love the idea behind his mechanic, I don't really remember if we've seen anything like that in an RE game before. By the time you reach this point in the game, maybe a little bit after the fish, you end up with more money than you know what to do with, and you're just mass buying everything. Nothing but guns are too outrageously priced, and I was able to immediately fully upgrade most of the guns I found or bought, literally the second I got them. Full stack my ammo, mines, pipe bombs, buy every recipe, and still have over 150k of currency left. The only time I actually ended up broke was around the 3rd baggage upgrade, and even then, literally 5 minutes later, I was above 150k again. Then there's the wells. There's nothing special about them and no actual trick to getting them. It's all tied to story progression. No well wheel in each area or anything like that. Just progress the main story, get the well wheel, boom, every well on the map is free game. Now for the puzzles. I'm not even going to mention the little ball puzzles. I didn't care for them at all, and the rewards were underwhelming as hell. They weren't really even puzzles either. The most interesting part of the side content was a few of the treasures, notably Lady D's, which had the best puzzle in the game, and the dolls, which ended up having a mini-boss. Lady D's treasure puzzle had me literally puzzled, trying to figure out what to do until I actually set one of the minions on fire and went, oh. It was great, and I was very audible about it, and that's sad to me because compared to something like the birthday puzzle from Resident Evil 7 or numerous puzzles from Resident Evil 2 Remake, this was mediocre, but I was actually excited because it was an actual puzzle. Beneviento's was literally only interesting for the side boss, no puzzle or anything like that. The side boss was just legitimately hard at that point in the game, and it was the first giant brute you actually fight. It was an intense fight too, one of the very few times the game actually felt hard on normal, which is another point. I chose to play on normal. I've played video games since I was 4 years old. I know what I'm doing. I'm not going to play on easy. but I don't care to suffer either. I don't want the extra artificial challenge of playing on hardcore. I just don't personally find any of that extra hardness fun in any way. This is one game where I should have played on hardcore though. Normal in Resident Evil 8 feels like easy or very easy on any other games I've played, especially in this series. On normal, this game barely ever presents a real threat to the player, and I've heard mixed thoughts on hardcore as well, with some saying the opening was overly hard, artificially hard, and then the rest of the game is just like playing on normal, and some saying that hardcore still just feels like easy from any other Resident Evil game.
Continuing on with the storyline of the game, you go to Salvatore Moreau's section. A section that I found very underwhelming, boring, and disappointing. To me, there is not a lot to really talk about when it comes to it. The fact of it is, this section was unnecessary in my point of view. As you're continuing on the path and make it to your destination, which is his home, where you can literally grab the flask immediately and then you stand there for a moment watching this man puke and whine when you could obviously be leaving, but nah, that'd be way too easy.
Mother Miranda, if it's for you, I'd do anything.
It's like the story really wants you to feel bad for this man, until he starts laughing at you saying you're a fool for talking too much, and now you're stuck and cannot leave, even though you can just cut through his awful goo. As you're trying to escape in the maze of a home, which is a mine, you make it out to a boat and venture to a cave where you come to find Chris, who is just an asshole and doesn't want to explain shit to you and tells you that you're out of your depth, as you're trying to figure out what the hell is going on and why the hell he killed your wife. Until they have to leave because of readings that make them think Miranda knows that they are there. Then, Giant Fish Man comes rumbling through the cave, destroying it and sends you underwater, sending Chris to fuck off to do nothing again. You come out from under the dank waters where you come in contact with the fish man once again, who is obviously just a whiner. He's puking and whining all at the same time until he inevitably turns to a big ugly fish for the rest of the area. While he is trying his damnedest to scare you, you are trying to figure out the puzzle to turn the power to the gate back on, to let all the water out. My husband thinks these puzzles are pretty good, but in my opinion, I just did not like them. You had to get the crank from windmill 2, crank the windmills, I just didn't like them. As you were having to cross bridges, at a point, the walkway wasn't there to get to the windmills, but no worries, your local fisherman has got your back and comes by, and they show up from underwater after he swims where they should be. After you get the windmills cranked, you head back to the room where you turn the power on, and you have a little square puzzle, where you turn the colors in the small squares to match the picture that is literally just laying there for you. You didn't have to look for it whatsoever. Once that is finished, you pull the lever and the gate is opened. Once this gate is open, you can walk down to the houses that was underneath the water. When you head out to search for your way back to the village, Fishman once again shows up to begin the boss battle. Just like me and my husband differ on the puzzles, we differ on the boss battle too. He really enjoyed it as to where I think it was just awful. Each to their own opinions, I guess. This boss battle consists of you walking around shooting at a fish man as he walks towards you, and at some moments he starts sprinting at you. Not too scary unless you have a major fish phobia. As the boss battle continues, he gets on top of a building and starts to, I believe, puke everywhere. And if you are unsure of what's happening in this moment, you are most likely going to get hit the first time, as the only safe place is under a roof. When he gets done puking, there are walls of goo which seem to be cornering you in, which you can just cut up with a knife and you're good to go. Until he inevitably dies from all your bullets and you are successful in the falling of the fishman. After the boss battle, there is a little area where you can go find his treasures, which is probably the best treasure in the game, a revolver. Once again, my husband thought there would be a little side quest or Easter egg if he went back to the fishman's lair, but again, just like the rest of the game, this just progressed the main story, with Heisenberg popping up on the TV to tell you he wants to help, giving you instructions to return to the village and make your way to him. The whole time my husband was playing this area, all I could think is, where's Barnacle Boy?
It's too late for that, Mr. Contest Winner.
At this point, I'm in and out of the story. It's been convoluted, left unexplained, and just overall confusing by this point. The game started with Chris Redfield killing your wife and taking your child, and the game has shown you Chris one time since then, and he was extremely vague and acting completely out of character, leaving the man whose wife he killed out of the loop, telling him it's none of his business what's going on, yet leaving him to run rampant in the village. You can't get half of a straight answer out of anyone as to what the fuck is going on, even though you're asking direct questions like, what are those things and what is this village? And getting answers pretty much comparable to, I like fish as well, sir. These people know you're an outsider. They've been here for years. They're terrified, want and need saving as well, and they're still giving you the runaround. It makes little sense and comes off as off-putting. As far as Chris goes, I hate when a story starts with something major, with a major character to the series, and avoids that plot point for 3/4 of the story. That's not good writing to me. It kind of immediately knocks the consistency of the story all to hell. But after the message from Heisenberg, the story actually gets moderately interesting, with Heisenberg saying that he wants to help you. And from the start, he's been one of the most interesting characters. The character who seemed like he didn't give a damn about what was going on, the higher power, or anything else. So you set off. He's also very politely set up giant billboard markers to show you where to go. How nice of him. And this is unfortunately where I forgot to press record again in my play session. So I lost, or rather didn't capture, every moment from the time I saved right here until a little ways into his compound. So let me run over it real quick. If you deviate off the path, you encounter another side boss. It's just another brute, so it's not as special as the first one you run into, but it's still fun and tense because you fight it in a very enclosed space. I ended up having a metric fuck ton of pipe bombs and mines by this point though, so he wasn't really that much of a challenge. From there, you make your way to his compound, going through two different basically wave survival waves in two different areas. The first wasn't that challenging, but the second one was, mainly because you used most of your ammo in the first. So the game finally gives you a classic dilemma of guns, but no ammo. Good luck. After Resident Evil Survive, you finally make your way to Heisenberg's factory, with him talking to you over the speakers the whole way there. The voice acting is a little over the top, but the dialogue is interesting enough, and I'm really intrigued by the character. You make your way through the front door and Heisenberg appears, face to face with you. And this scene is actually great. He tells you how in truth he hates Miranda and what she's done to him, and he wants to kill her. But the only one powerful enough to do so is your daughter, Rose, so you basically tell him to fuck off. I think you actually outright tell him to fuck off. He wants to help you. Whether he's going to betray you or not, he still wants to help, giving you the chance to take the help. Be prepared for him to betray you and betray him. But no, Big Brain Ethan says fuck you, and so you get kicked into a hole. A hole you were literally sat in front of. Huh, I wonder what's gonna happen here. But it's probably with the coolest designed monster in the game. A giant motherfucker with a fucking propeller built onto his body that leads to a very tense chase sequence. It was terrifying, but honestly there was still no threat of death. It was just another, just keep running, jump down a hole, and you're good. This leads you to one of the most interesting areas in the game. My wife kind of disagrees with that. While she thought it was boring, I found it the most interesting. It's a new setting for Resident Evil, at least from my memory, a man-machine factory with very claustrophobic areas, making the area almost feel like a maze, along with the enemies you're fighting who are extremely well designed. Not in the sense of difficulty, because they're not difficult at all really, but they look great, and the explanation for how they were actually created is also great. I really enjoyed most of this area. It's just a sad thing that we basically said for most of these areas. It feels like it was cut short. This, just like the other three areas, feels like it could have been its own entire game. See, this game feels like it tried to appease every single fan from Resident Evil, from every single aspect of every single Resident Evil fan. The Resident Evil 2 fans with Dimitrescu, the horror fans with Beneviento, the puzzle fans with the fish area, and then I guess a slight mix of everything in the final area, even though that actually hinders the area and the game because it's so short you don't get to fully experience all of those aspects. So you could really compare this area to 5 with bigger bullet sponge characters, and I mean, they're bullet sponge if you don't shoot the right spot, but, you know, I guess it's more comparable to 5 because of the bullet sponge enemies. The main gimmick of this area really is just going and finding molds for different things to progress the area. Sometimes it's a key, sometimes it's a horse decoration to open a wall door, sometimes it's a fuse. Interesting enough, and it adds that Resident Evil backtracking we all know and somewhat love. Eventually you make it to the top and run into Heisenberg again, and this time he surrounds himself in metal, showing his true form, and then knocks you all the way back down to the bottom of the factory. This is finally, fucking finally, where we get some goddamn information on what happened at literally the beginning of the game. You run into Chris, who for some reason has just been wandering about in each area, and apparently he's under this factory planting explosives and building a death go-kart? Okay. Either way, he finally fills you in on what the holy fuck is going on, finally revealing that Mia was not Mia, that it was actually Miranda who had replaced Mia at some point in time, that the mission was actually to save Ethan and Rose from the Miranda-Mia imposter. He finally, after making you believe he kills your wife and takes your child, literally tells you,
Alright, Ethan. Alright. I guess I owe you an explanation.
No shit, motherfucker! He tells you that the whole village, the monsters, everything is all because of Miranda. We're finally getting exposition 3/4 of the way through the game. This blows my mind. Resident Evil has always been confusing and somewhat convoluted, but I can't at least remember a Resident Evil story that left everything that was going on so vague and confusing this far into the story. Maybe I'm wrong and feel free to correct me in the comments, but the exposition coming this late into the story left me uninterested in the story by the time it hit this point. My only thought was, I just want to save the kid. I had no interest in everything else. Not Miranda, not any of the other side goons, not anything else. But either way, after this exposition, Chris gives you a death buggy and you take an elevator up to fight Heisenberg. Now, for me, this was the coolest damn fight in the game. It was over the top as hell, completely out of character for the tone of the game set by RE7, but it had the most differences in phases. A giant metal monster coming at you. It was just fun. It did remind me of a little Infamous Games opening sequence, though. And this fight also gives you one of the best references I've seen in a video game.
The boulder punching asshole!
I literally had to pause the game from bursting out laughing, but after the ridiculous but cool fight ends, Miranda appears as Mia, showing you she's literally been right in front of your face the whole time by showing the different forms she's taken throughout the game, and then ripping Ethan's heart out and killing him. Holy shit, I was mad at this point. What happened to meet you there, Chris, you lying fuck?
Take that elevator. I'll meet you topside.
After the death of the character we've played as, gotten to know, and come to care for in 2 games now, you take control of Chris. My thoughts and my husband's thoughts were completely on the same page at this moment. Why the hell did that happen? Why the hell am I playing as Chris? I don't want to. This is dumb. It feels like the twist from Metal Gear Solid 2, but lazier. A twist just for the sake of a twist. The section isn't abnormally long, it's just an on-the-rails first-person shooter with the game literally giving you 800 bullets and an AK-47, grenades, a decked-out pistol, and a laser designator to call in missile strikes. To be fair, the missile strike isn't usable except to continue the mission, but the game in this section devolves into a wave survival game once again. Once you beat the waves and blow up the castle on the hill, you jump down a hole into the next boss fight, another one of the giant fur boys from the start of the game. You beat him with missile strikes, which, if they were powerful enough to blow up a castle, wooden structure thing, and make a giant hole in the ground, how is it not killing Chris and the monster in this 20x20 area? Either way, you beat him and make it into Miranda's lab, where most of the story is explained. You find out Miranda was once mortal, wandering into a cave discovering the mold after the death of her daughter. The goon squad, lichens, and other monsters are just experiments, and that's Miranda's whole goal, is just to find a vessel for her daughter. An actually really cool Easter egg is the fact that Miranda worked closely with Spencer, the founder of Umbrella Pharmaceuticals, and the owner of the mansion you end up at in Resident Evil 1. But after this, it's revealed that Mia was alive, locked in a cell in Miranda's lab. Why? Why didn't Miranda just kill her? It just made no sense. Also with that, when Chris tells Mia Ethan is dead, she denies it and reveals that he's special.
You don't understand how special he is.
After Call of Duty Big Red Chris and the Mia reveal, we cut to, you guessed it, Ethan, who's in a snowy wasteland, half dead, struggling to move. I'm pretty sure all of us would have been a little worse off if we would have just had our heart ripped out of our chest by a 100-year-old immortal witch lady. Either way, Resident Evil 7's antagonist appears. You know, the one who supposedly is ancient and scary? No, she's just a failed experiment, but she's there to tell us that we're dead. Thanks, Scooby-Doo. I don't know how we would have solved that mystery without you. But no, not now, not right now when our heart was just ripped out. Back in Louisiana, back at the Baker house, she tells you that Jack murdered you. You died in that house and your body was made up of mold. Entirely. Okay? How, why, who, what, where, and what in God's holy fuck? Evelyn was beat. Her mold was supposedly gone. The people freed, everyone dead, but Ethan is somehow still made up of entirely that mold. All the other mold creatures from RE7 were just monsters. It drove Jack and his family mad. It drove Mia mad just being infected, but Ethan is normal? Normal, run-of-the-line Joe, no fucked up personality traits from it whatsoever, is able to have a child. I get it, that child gains powers, extreme powers from it, but still, there's no hints toward that being a twist. Not in RE7, not anywhere in RE8 up until this exact part. And you can't say him healing is how, you know, it's pointed at. You can't say that. He healed like that in Resident Evil 7 before the apparent point that Jack kills him. Leon, Claire, Chris, Jill, and every other Resident Evil protagonist are able to heal this much damage as well. And they're not mold people. This does not make sense. Adding a crazy-ass horseshit twist just to have a crazy-ass horseshit twist is not a good thing to do. All you're doing in that situation is making less sense out of the story and taking away from RE7, because this could have been a plot point in that story. Either way, you talk some shit, tell the kid to fuck off, and come back to life with no heart. It still doesn't make sense that he has the ability to heal and regenerate, his life, but no mold powers. Anyway, you're off to kill the witch, the dastardly wicked witch. You wake up in the back of Duke's carriage. Remember how I said Duke plays a pretty big part in the story? Well, here you go. He's kind of your guide and helping hand through Resident Evil 8, and I actually enjoyed that. It was a twist in and of itself for me. I expected Duke to be a major part of what was going on and eventually turn on you, but no, he's actually a decent enough dude. I wonder why, though. Ethan actually asks and doesn't get a direct answer. But you're off, slowly making your way through the direct path set for you to fight Miranda. You of course get a little cutscene before you actually fight, with her trying to resurrect her daughter Eva, with Rose as her vessel. But when the baby comes back out of the mold or methylrizine, whatever the hell, meth, it's still Rose, and then Miranda cries out, "My power is leaving me." I'm assuming that's because of Rose and how powerful she is, but we don't know because it's never explained, not even at the end of the game. You fight Miranda, which, let me tell you, is one of the worst Resident Evil boss fights I've ever played. She was just a bullet sponge with 4 different, I'll give you that, but uninspired phases or transformations rather, because she could and does jump back and forth between all 4. The normal, the spider, the flying, and the Murder's Wet Nurse. I actually died from frustration because I used all my ammo and thought I was doing the fight entirely wrong, because I was just shooting her over and over and over again and nothing was happening. But no, she was just a bullet sponge. Hit your shots, all 3,000 of them, and she dies in a very lackluster way. The baby appears from inside her, you pick the baby up, and you start to deteriorate, which, again, why? These two molds are not directly connected. Evelyn was a bad experiment from a piece of mold in Eva's DNA. To me, they would have been completely separated by that point, right? Making Ethan his own entity, who should have died in RE7 from Evelyn dying, not from Miranda dying here. Unless the game is saying, well, he finally just took too much damage, he died, to which I would rebuttal with, what about the goddamn healing stuff that's reattached his limbs? Either way, Chris comes running in, once again. Thanks, Chris, for shooting the giant evil monster and fucking off to God knows where while I fight her. He runs in and tries to help you get out of the area and back to Exfil, so you can blow the village all to hell and leave. All while the game is heavily playing up the aspect of, oh, Ethan is just a faceless character. He always has been. You're Ethan. He doesn't matter that much. We can kill him here. You don't need to see his face, which is really annoying. Because whether we've seen his face or not, we've gotten to know this character for the past 2 games, gotten to know his family, and now go on this adventure with him to save his daughter. The character wasn't interesting to begin with, but by the end of Resident Evil 7, we cared about him, and we wanted to see him get his daughter back in this game. And that's why I kept going. Just to kill him now is a giant fuck you to everyone who loved the story and characters of Resident Evil 7 and even 8. And with that, Chris hasn't mentioned Ethan being mold at one point since he's found out. We didn't even get to see one of the most popular characters in Resident Evil react to the information that the protagonist of the past 2 games, someone that we're led to believe became friends with Chris, and that Chris helped. We don't get to see his reaction that Ethan is just mold. Just made up of the enemy, the villain from the last game. We don't get to see that. It just cuts to a black screen and then Ethan's conversation with Evelyn. Ethan decides to give Chris the baby and stay behind himself to blow up the village. Staring down the giant mold creature of the game. Emotional, I'll give you that. I felt for Ethan. Hell, I felt for Chris, and that is entirely because of the actors playing these characters, and the emotion put behind the dialogue. You get back to the plane with Rose. Chris has to tell an emotionally distraught Mia that Ethan stayed behind to save her and Rose, and it's honestly emotional. You can tell Chris cares.
He stayed so we could all escape.
And then it cuts to the storybook that basically shows that this was the entire story of Resident Evil 8, which if you didn't know that from the start, you're clueless. It also adds an extra scene or 2 to the animation of the storybook to actually confirm that this was the story of the game. And I actually dug this as well. It's cliche, having the main characters read from a storybook at the start, and the storybook just ends up being the actual story that happens, but it was well voice acted, well animated, and just overall interesting.
With rampant rage, Father fought the witch, while Mother's loving touch shattered the dark enchantment.
The post-credit scene is where the game gives us the biggest what moment. It picks up with, obviously, Rose on a bus. Holding the storybook her mom would read to her and holding flowers, smiling when she hears a mom reading a story to her curious child. She gets off the bus and it's revealed that yes, Ethan is actually dead. This is actually Rose, and there has been a 20 or so year time jump. We see an agent signaling for her. He calls her Evelyn and she threatens to fuck his entire world up with the things Chris doesn't even know she can do. So they use this entire game, this sequel, to set up a sequel. That's pretty much a slap in the face to anyone and everyone who enjoyed RE7's story and even the opening and middle hours of this game's story. The game completely ends with the two driving off into the sunset, with the man walking beside, but towards the truck. I'm pretty sure this is symbolism and that the man is meant to be Ethan. It even got data mined or something that the model of the man was Ethan, and that's cool I guess, but it's more confusing than anything because this is Resident Evil. Is that actually Ethan, or is it just what I said, symbolism for his ending? But that's the end of Resident Evil 8's story. As the game said itself, the story for the father is done.
We're not saying it's a bad game. It's not.
No, it's really not. My husband enjoyed playing it and I enjoyed watching it.
There were some moments in the game that were extremely fun, tense, and horrifying. A very well-designed setting and great areas.
Great characters too. I love the three daughters of Lady Dimitrescu. They were extremely intriguing and I wanted to know more about them and Lady D herself. I wanted to dive into the story behind them and the other characters.
But that's the problem with the game. It doesn't let you do that. It opts for a fast pace, rush through everything, these characters don't matter, just shoot things style.
As a purely shooting game with horror aspects, this game is great, but as a sequel to the game that redefined the series and even the genre, it just doesn't hold up.
We wanted to love Resident Evil 8. We wanted it to be better than Resident Evil 7, but it's not. And with our critique done, it's time to give the final score.
We give Resident Evil 8 a 6 out of 10.
Like we said, the game feels great in areas, looks great in every area, and the combat, while way too often over the top, also feels great. But you can't play this game without thinking about Resident Evil 7 and how good it was.
This game had the potential to be the best game of 2021, competing with every title that will release this year, but overall ends up being another disappointing entry in the franchise.
What worries me the most about 8 is that it's so much like 5. It seems to be having an identity crisis. It doesn't know if it wants to be more like 4 with the action or more like 7 with the tense, helpless horror the entry brought into the series. And while this game is still decent, what worries me is what came after 5.
Resident Evil 6.
Hey everybody, thank you for watching the critique. I really appreciate it. Huge shout out to my fiance, to my wife, marriage is just a paper, man, for doing this video with me. She actually really likes, she's gotten into playing video games a lot with me. She's got some games that she really enjoyed, and we came up with this idea together to do, reviews, higher production reviews, to where we would give our thoughts on different sections of the game, sit down, record them, and upload them for you guys. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. We're going to be doing most of the major games that come out, even like if you're a fighting game fan and you're on the channel because of fighting games, we're going to be doing Guilty Gear Strive as well. We're going to try to hit every major release that comes out that at least we're interested in, and we might also do some movies as well. Those might be a little bit different with more of a discussion thing. But yeah, we really had fun making this video. I definitely have fun making it, getting her involved with everything that goes on, over here in my area and, my work. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I know a lot of you are probably going to have a pretty big problem with this video. All I've seen is praise for Resident Evil 8. And while I don't understand why, I could see why some people do really enjoy the game, but let's have a conversation about it. Let's have a conversation in the comments down below. I don't want wars. I don't want people yelling at each other. Let's just have a nice discussion. You tell me why you like the game, and I'll link you to certain parts of the video, because I explained in this video why I don't like the game. But anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. I can't wait to do another one of these, and I'll see you guys then. Peace out.